Region Etude 2 from the Rose 40 Studies. This is number 32 in E minor. It's in ABA form, and you'll see what that means as you learn the piece. Essentially, we have a musical idea that we work with for a while, which is the A theme. Then we do something completely different for a while, usually in a different key, which is the B section. And after a while of that, then we return to the A music, and sometimes that's the end, and sometimes we have a tail. It's called a coda, C-O-D-A. Bump, ba-da-da-dum, bump, bump, most famous coda of them all. Now, consider starting with the blackest spots on the page. That's something my now deceased colleague, Dr. Carl Seal, used to say. The blackest spots in this case are the 32nd note passages in measure 8, 12, and 44, and they're good challenges. Get out your metronome and start at a moderate tempo, counting 32nd notes. So click, 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 da, 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 preposterously slow. And when you have the notes down, you speed it up a little bit, you speed it up a little bit. Every time when you're successful, you speed it up a little bit. Maybe if you're not successful, if your focus wavers a little bit, then you beat yourself up and slow it down a little bit. But you're going in the direction of getting it up to tempo. So if you start at just arbitrarily 32nd note equals 100, and then you do 105 and 110, 115. By the time you get to 200, the thing is chirping or clicking so fast that maybe you want to change that, and instead of counting 32nd notes, you set the metronome for 16th. Dot, 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 dot. And you go through this whole cycle again, and you get up to 200 more or less. It doesn't have to be 200. There's nothing magical about that. And you reset it back to 100. Dot, 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 dot. And by now you're probably up near half tempo, and you're playing it really well. So you work that up, and you have 2 months or more than 2 months to get this done in, right around 2 months. Don't worry about trills and things like that in the first couple of days. You can add them later. When you find technical passages that bother you, make your fingers feel like that, create exercises to solve them. You can usually come up with something that's a measure or 2 measures long and get it fixed rather quickly. Now, a few fingering suggestions in measure 5 and measure 32. We have quarter notes to start the measure. 1, 2, F sharp, chromatic fingering, E sharp, G, F sharp, not chromatic fingering, D sharp, B, A. This will be true both times. So you get 2 for the price of 1. Lock in that fingering pattern, repeated success. Lock in that fingering pattern just like you did with the 32nd note patterns that we have discussed already. Get used to approaching and leaving that measure by adding one note, then another, several times. When you can play them consistently well, move on. The next day come back and do the whole thing all over again, and the next, and the next, and the next. When you get to our little friend measure 44, you will want right hand B, not this one, over here, bottom outer corner, chromatic F sharp as you go up the scale, and not chromatic F sharp late in the measure. And so late in measure 47, 47, 47, we'll use a chromatic B, C, B, B, A sharp. There you go. Breathing should always reinforce phrasing and musicianship. A few spots where that can be especially and noticeably true are measures 14, 26, 27, and 30. D, da, 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 dum, da, da, okay? And similar types of situations. They've already given you measure 31, which is another one that I would recommend. And measures 46, 50, 51, and 54. Breathe to reinforce phrasing, in each case after the long note, and without distorting rhythm. 1, 2, da, da, that sort of thing works really well. That's how you will breathe professionally for the rest of your career. The final step in delivering an elegant and artistic performance is to consider where each phrase matures. We talked about that a few minutes ago. The first phrase consists of measures 1 and most of measure 2. 1, 2, 3, 4E, and a 1, a 2. And that makes good musical sense. And 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4E, and a bottom. But you get into the piece a little bit more, and David Height has come up with some really strange ideas. So I will make a copy of what I think would be better phrasings, better dynamics for you. Adjudicators are instructed to consider musicianship, which, since we're in music, that's a good thing to consider. Sometimes there are publisher errors or even editor errors. Turning the page here. Make the beats 1 and 2 of measure 9 feel like 2 downbeats. So not 1, 2, but 1, 2, or feels like 1, 1. Measures 10 and 11 are a phrase and are handled like the opening, crescendo to the downbeat of measure 11. Then there's the 3-note pickup, bum, 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 crescendo through measure 12. By now you may be ready to add the trill. You can interpret that either as a 1-bump trill or as a grace note before the beat. So measure D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, A, G sharp, but you have to do it in time. So if you do that much, you better be sure that you can. A good alternative would be to go from the G right to B, A. Bum, ba-dum, ba-da-da. That can work very well for you musically. Nobody's going to beat you up over that idea. Play a pretty long fermata in measure 24. Then stop, breathe, and go on. When we get to con molto espressivo, where did I put that one? Measure 25, believe it. Believe the espressivo, the expressive thing. A slightly faster tempo will make the music really work. Not much faster, just a little bit. We have a few mini climaxes moving toward beat 3 of measure 28. For structural purposes, I recommend breathing after the half notes in measure 26 and 27. The next phrase matures on the fermata low B, then slowly up the scales, cadenza. Feel free to play with the tempo and rhythm just a little bit, not too huge a distortion. In measure 33, we return to what we did at the beginning, or do we? Notice that this time we start the second measure of our phrase with a dotted 8th, 16th pattern. Bam, bam, bam. Way back in measure 2, it was a double dotted 8th. Bam, bam, bam. So a very different feel for them. Do you think the committee will notice if you don't do that, if you don't make a difference between that? You bet we will. But the phrase matures just like the first time on the downbeat of the second measure. There's some sloppy editing around here. The next phrase is just like measures 3 and 4. Then a long phrase like we had earlier, maturing not on the open G, where the publisher says, but on the low B, the downbeat of measure 41. You might want to go over that in pencil or pen or something so that you can see that and try it out on people. See if they believe that it is musically more effective as well. Measures 42, 43 are well edited, resolving on E sharp. Quick, think. What's E sharp? F. Next phrase matures the downbeat of 45. Then our little phrase from earlier, 3 pickup notes, bum, 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 leading the downbeat of 46, and breathe. Then a prolonged version of that leading through crescendo to the downbeat of 49. The coda, or tail, starts in mid 49, and here's where it gets cute. We kind of tell them the same thing twice, kinda. We have a long phrase maturing on beat 3 of 52, but with some mini resolutions along the way. So breathe after the half notes in 50 and 51. The second statement should be softer than the first. We have a couple of altered notes going from A in measure 50 and G in 51 to A sharp in 54 and G sharp in 55, which gentle things out a bit. So play it accordingly. At the end of measure 56, we have a turn which will steal its time from the quarter note we have just played. It won't delay the note that's coming. So in effect, we will play an eighth of B, not a quarter, and fill in the extra time with 4 30-second notes. Bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, and then back to what's actually written, resolving on the downbeat of 57. So the crescendo lasts a bit longer. That turn is made a wee bit easier by the writ. The ending matures on the first E, but crescendo through the second E into the third. Bum, 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 diminuendo. No fermata, so try not to hold the final note too long. A wee prolongation is okay to end elegantly. As for the turn in measure 58, you have half a beat to play your eighth note A, then B, A, G sharp A before 64th notes, before arriving on your first E. I recommend that you invest the time to learn real B fingering rather than the trill fingering, because the note is better. So those are the thoughts about this piece.